We have learned the power of each to act, to use her voice, to tell a story, to give birth, to briefly exist. This entirely different model slows down to convey yearning and loss, an understanding of the ephemeral. Love encompasses an alternative when everything else has failed. 5. Mothers of the future, there is very little to be given or received other than affection. We have milk in abundance, loyalty and service, surrendering devotion, and we provide. Love is immaterial capital, pure communication, developing unknown powers through bonds of solidarity. Generous thinkers, with pockets in surprising number, share their skills with each other, a mobilization of love. Good listeners are the conduit, giving and receiving collectively to one another. Labors of love blur into an expressive force in the stress of new necessity. Relations of trust bear fruit, sustain society, and mean everything. Let us inhale and exhale together. We are entering an era of affective relations. Love is the mesh, and probably our last hope. 6. All the stories have collapsed into one another. Clearly, the motives were many and mixed, concealed behind an image of pleasure and power to stir up potent response. The necessary resurgence is knotted in string, depicted in thread, consigned to the work of our hands. Matters of concern become matters of fact. Recuperation requires collaboration. But the real differences flourish in nurturing and visiting, weaving the tales, manifesting the love. We become responsible for each other in the ruins. 7. I hear you interruptively, as if the voice itself were an ethical conundrum. I am imagining collective structure, cultural workers and educators, migrants and refugees from the past, in a dialogic of accountability. I believe in what you practice: civility, responsibility, and thought transference, to support your existence, to share the planet, to commit to love. There's something I want to give you when you don't have much time left. The act of touch, a sense of purpose. 8. It all began with string, spidery lines, patterning our place in the world. The companionship of needlework is a fragile intimacy, listening, not speaking, to those who came, lived, and walked before. Material rites of passage reconcile upon a ground of darkest velvet, an outline of small insurrections, stitches held fast by our touch. Threads dangle between generations, bringing a coded visual language into existence. Needles, threads, pins, and buttons ensnare us. An elusive now awaits us. 9. It was a great responsibility, living in the wispy remains, but now the distance has collapsed. We need to change the story, enhance collective thinking, weave paths and consequences to reseed our souls and our worlds. Imagine learning to be truly present, Try on nostalgia and intimacy. Learn what importance sounds like. We require these gestures in our hands, giving and receiving patterns in unexpected combinations, relaying connections that matter. This coaxing toward a story changes permanently by the simple act of paying attention. 10. Follow a thread in the dark. Our bodies have always remembered lines of inventive connection, tales of mysterious effect, the narrative we think we know. We succumb to despair in the enormousness of time. The rhythm of accepting and giving, magnetic and gentle, is essential to the fabric. Our task is to enter the web of connections, yearn toward resurgence, tell stories in hand upon hand, hold the unasked for pattern. We are not at the end of things, but the beginning. The order is re-knitted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you. It's really beautiful to hear those letters, and it's a sort of comforting radicalism, or a radicalism of comfort.
Yeah, follow that. Okay, so I'm just going to talk to you about my conversations with clothes. I'm a textile artist. I like the introduction. I can't remember quite how you put it, but also sort of use writing in my work a lot as well. So if dresses could talk, what stories might they tell? A story about who made them, or who wore them and what they did in them. The marks of alterations and wear and tear upon their fabric like scars on skin. Emily Spivak puts it well, our clothes are full of memory and meaning. That's why we all have garments that we haven't worn in years, but just can't part with. So my work is largely influenced by my own life experiences, and I use secondhand garments, usually dresses, as a starting point to create multi-layered pieces. Something which reveals something about the dress's history and something about myself, however destructive this process of exposure seems. Sparks puts it that engaging in the autoethnographic process itself can constitute an emotionally painful and potentially self-injurious act. So let me take you on a dress story journey. So dresses can be telling all sorts of stories. Here they're telling a fairy tale story. This is The Green Ladies. It's a visual retelling of a folk tale called The Green Ladies of One Tree Hill, which is a story of three magical sisters who are trees by day and women by night. I used a triptych of fabric to take text from the story and hide it sort of in plain view within the piece and tell the story of those three sisters, and through that kind of revealing and sort of hiding and revealing at the same time in this piece. Then another fairy tale, one that's well known. This is titled The Wolf Within. It's a reinterpretation of Little Red Riding Hood. And here I used secondhand children's clothes, actually, because they're for many reasons, but told the story through a short stop motion animation film. Then I just deconstructed those clothes and put them into another big piece, which was embellished and printed and stitched, again, hiding some of the narrative, some of the letters, some of the words within the story, within the final piece, each of those garments representing a different character of the story, as you can see there. So what other stories can dresses tell? Well, they can tell other people's stories. So here's the black beaded dress. I was donated a dress with a history, the story of its purchase, and then its rediscovery decades later, when it was donated to me by the wearer with a plea to tell the story that of the dress that I could see. So this dress tells people's stories across the years, and this dress is slowly wearing out. The thread that holds the beads on has completely disintegrated, and the beads just drop off all over the place all the time. So I was filling in the gaps of those left by those beads with words from the wearer's story, to embellish the dress and tell that story of the dress as it wears out, and as we too age and reflect on our uncertain futures. And then dresses can tell stories about me. They can tell me where I came from, revealing in this particular piece the 3 green dresses, aspects of myself linked to 3 garments. And again, this is based on the Green Ladies of One Tree Hill, but told through three dresses that had a slightly different kind of emphasis on separate parts, a kind of a past, present, future kind of aspect, reflecting back on my family and my heritage links. So the first dress having pictures of my family and snippets from letters my mum had written me, and with her words kind of printed and stitched into the piece. Ruth Berhard says that women think back through their mothers, and I love that idea of lines and lines of female ancestors kind of stretching back behind me. And then for myself going forward, a very big question mark about having my own children, not being able to have children. Do I mind not being able to have children? And many questions about how do I pass on when there's no one there to pass it on to. So this dress, the DNA dress, tells that story, really. The idea that the red thread representing my link by blood to my ancestors, and the golden thread a link with the family stories and the memories that are passed down through the generations. But it explores that idea of being at the end of my genetic line. I'm the last of my genetic line, questioning my future and my legacy, as I say, if I'm not able to pass on my own DNA. Who tells my stories? So this brings me to the daughters' dresses. This is a piece prompted by an event in my own life around finding out that after a round of fertility treatment, I wasn't pregnant and wasn't going to kind of pursue that anymore. It uses, again, secondhand children's clothes to help me tell the story of my real, not real daughter. I had a great vision at the moment I discovered I wasn't pregnant, that I had a vision of my daughter, and I know that she exists in the world somewhere, even if not in my own time. And I imagine her growing up through these 3 dresses, which represent 3 key milestones in her life. And I play with alternative futures, addressing my own childlessness by collapsing time, as Walter Benjamin would put it, through what I would call prospective nostalgia, which is also what Boehm calls it. And this is this idea of that nostalgia can be for something that hasn't happened yet or may never happen. And also based on the idea that Dickinson and Urban say that the yearning of nostalgia need not be for a real place, or indeed a place at all, but maybe for past relationships or people, real or imaginary. And so I think, so I'm going to play a film which represents this story of the daughters' dresses. But for me, dresses can help us reveal to ourselves about how we feel. They can transport us to another time and place in an instant. They can conjure memories as if they happened yesterday, or maybe even tomorrow. So Liz Stanley, talking about photographs, says that these images allow her to move through time TARDIS-like, and that's how I feel with dresses. They can take us to a place and a time anywhere. You can travel through time so easily. And dresses are great conversationalists, but they're also my confidants. They're who I pass on my family sayings and traditions to, and who I tell my stories to. And perhaps they will stand in for my own descendants, passing on my stories to others after I'm gone. Now I'm hoping I'm going to now be able to play you the film. I'm going to come out of there into another screen, and hopefully this will play. Collapsing time, I see your face. A backlit fragment, a rush of nostalgia and joy, a projection from a future time I have not journeyed to. Impossible, but there you are, encircled into the family, wrapped in tradition and love, our names, your talisman. History's mirror, your future, my past, blurring together as we move through time. Is that you or me dressed for the first day of school? Okay. Bloodlines, bold and bright, legions of ancestors at your back, shoulder to shoulder across the ages, armed with archaic family sayings. Right, sorry. So I'm being told you can't see my film. Sorry about that. Let me try again. It's only a minute long, so hopefully you'll be able to see it now. Collapsing time, I see your face. A backlit fragment, a rush of nostalgia and joy, a projection from a future time I have not journeyed to. Impossible, but there you are, encircled into the family, wrapped in tradition and love, our names, your talisman. History's mirror, your future, my past, blurring together as we move through time. Is that you or me dressed for the first day of school? Bloodlines, bold and bright, legions of ancestors at your back, shoulder to shoulder across the ages, armed with archaic family sayings. My precarious link to the past and future. At the end of my line, your dress is pregnant with memory and meaning. My confessors, my custodians of conversations with you. Okay, that's me. So that film was made especially for this event. So that was yeah, that was fun to make.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you. Sorry, I'm just struggling to unmute myself. Thank you, and a wonderful reminder that even if we haven't reproduced ourselves, that we are all part of that bloodline. We are all beneficiaries of maternity.
I gave birth to my first child and had a complicated birth and postnatal experience. I suffered birth trauma and I was diagnosed with PTSD when my baby was around 8 months of age. Whilst I mostly dealt with the mental and physical difficulties of PTSD with therapy, what I wasn't prepared for, nor do I ever think I will fully get over, is the effect the investigation report into my birth had on my mental well-being. So writing became part of my therapy. In fact, my therapist described it as homework. I've not written creatively before, and I certainly would never consider myself creative. I didn't understand how writing would benefit my well-being positively, but what I learned along the course of my therapy was the power the written word was in healing a hurt and damaged soul. So I maintained a blog, mostly private, and occasionally would share when I felt brave enough. But what it did for me was enable me to see my progress as I was healing, all the steps back that I made. So therapy for me has since finished, but I still try to write when I can. It's hard with 2 children. I do this often around the time of my child's birthday, as I struggle most with the memories from that time. I write when I feel mostly emotionally overwhelmed, and I think that's kind of a release in the process. Whilst I don't think my pieces are at all award-winning, each holds for me a period of time when my emotions ran high. And to me, they've become precious notes capturing the rawness unique to my experiences, but where others may also find comfort. So I wanted to share just a couple of pieces, but I thought I would, if I can find it, just describe to you what birth trauma meant to me. So I wrote this back in 2017. So for me, it means narrowly cheating death and worrying that death is still coming for you, that you're afraid to die but want to die because the feeling is too overwhelming to want to live through, feeling broken into millions of pieces and losing parts of yourself. Replacing those parts, with a hangover of anxiety and utter sadness that you'll wonder if you'll ever know what it feels like to be you again. Fear of sleeping because you know there will be nightmares again, and fear of being awake because you're living them. Right, sorry.
It's okay, Claire.
So I wrote my most recent piece about the feeling I had about when I received the report into the care, and when I received it, they didn't really acknowledge the harm that I had suffered, And whilst I was very lucky, I had a healthy child, that seems to be a lot of the stigma around birth trauma, that you have a healthy child, so what's the problem, get over it. And that's what this report kind of confirmed to me in writing, were the thoughts of the place in which I gave birth. It's called Those Two Words. No harm, they said. I feel my body drain of blood, ringing in my ears, eyes closing, death calling. No harm, they said. Waking alone, dark spaces, wires and tubes, babyless. No harm, they said. Standing but crouched over with pain and weakness, blood dripping, vulnerable, trying to brush matted hair in a shower with a stranger watching. No harm, they said. Nipples sore, milk sparse, the mechanical pump wheeled into the room, no help. Baby screaming, no help, baby hungry, dehydrating. Surely I should know. Get back in your room with your screaming baby. You'll disturb people, no help. No harm, they said. Gift of blood flowing into my veins, baby screaming as they take hers. Let it end. Looking for your help, eyes meet but none is given. My mind telling me horrible, unrepeatable things. No harm, they said. Home, so thankful but fearful, pain overwhelms me, so sore, so tired. My mind takes me back there, but I'm not there. I'm thankful, but so tired, so sore. No harm, they said. Sepsis devouring me, running over me like a shower, the rancid smell, more surgery, this time my stomach left unsutured. No harm, they said. Body oozing offensive fluid from a wound that was never meant to be, dressing over burden, seeping, sanitary towels stuck to clothes to mop up the overspill. 3 months feels like 3 years, dignity gone, mind going, I want to slip away. No harm, they said. Flashbacks becoming more frequent, I'm back there, I feel my body drain of blood, I'm living but have no life. No harm, they said. Brown envelope filled with a report that held a promise, a hope but no hope found. No harm, it said. So my last piece, as I mentioned before, I write around the my daughter's birthday, because that tends to when I feel quite emotionally overwhelmed. And it just goes to show how it never really goes. And I think with maternity care, it's so kind of done and dusted by the time you get discharged. You know, if you're lucky, you get a 6-week debrief. But actually, each year we live with birth trauma, we're unique compared to any other trauma. We have to celebrate it every year. So I write this for my daughter, but I do hope she never sees it. My darling girl, I'm sorry I'm not the mummy, I hoped to be to you. If only time traveling existed, I would turn back the dials of the clock for you and I. Many say ignorance is bliss, but for us, dear girl, it has caused irreparable harm. For this, I am more sorry than you may ever know or understand. If we could dream for a moment, or pretend, as you so often call it, I would make believe all that I know now I'd have known then. I'd change it all I was ignorant to, the arrogance of believing I knew enough. My lovely child, I am so deeply sorry for what I've become. My brain fails me, anxiety devouring me from inside out like a cursed disease. It bites at you so often like a rabid dog, and I see it, I do, but often so late. It's all my fault, and you, my sweetheart, are innocent, but have suffered because of it. It's your 4th birthday today, and it's still hard now, as it was then. But now I see the person you are becoming, and you are wonderful and kind and generous and fierce and caring and have such a beautiful soul. But I see the sides of you frayed from having me as your mummy. And I am so deeply sorry, my darling girl. Oh, that's it. Sorry. Gosh, that's hard to read out loud.
Oh, Claire, thank you so much. Well done.
Thank you. Oh, you never know how hard it's going to be until you do it.